spread COVID more because we enunciate the P sound.
This is a pen and pen and pen.
This is a pen. これはペンです。Hey guys, welcome back to Yoshi channel. So as I was suggested by a couple of people to make a reaction video to us 12 reasons not to move to Japan by abroad in Japan. But instead of just doing a live reaction video, I actually have already watched this video. So before watching my video, please go to his channel and watch this video 12 reasons not to move to Japan and give him likes and subscribe, because as you know, he always makes a very informative and entertaining video about Japan. And this time, hopefully I can give you some thoughts of me being a Japanese person, as well as some tips that you can use to get away with some of the struggles he mentioned in the video while you were here in Japan. So without further ado, let's start. So in the beginning of the video, he talks about how thin the walls are here in Japan, which leads to lack of privacy, and I agree to some extent. When I was a university student here in Japan, I had a friend who lived in an apartment with very thin walls, and unfortunately for him, he really liked to play the guitar, and what he had to do was he had to go to the park every single time he plays the guitar in order to avoid any noise problems with the neighbors. But personally for me, I have lived with around 3 or 4 different apartments here in Japan, and I have never had a problem with it. So I think it depends more of the construction style of the building as well as your luck of finding a room. Interestingly though, I have experience of living in a student dormitory in Germany, and there I could actually hear the noise of the footsteps or people talking all the time. So I think it is rather a universal problem than the problem you can only find here in Japan. So a solution to this problem, if you're looking for an apartment with the solid walls here in Japan, I recommend you choosing the one with the RC construction style. So RC stands for reinforced concrete, and I found a website saying that you will most likely get away with noise problems if you pick the one with the RC construction style. And wooden construction style, the building seems to have more problems with the noise. So keep your mind with that. And also, before you make a contract, make sure you go for viewing. So if you go for viewing, basically you can see the actual price, and you could probably knock on the walls to see if the wall is solid or not. So that's a tip for you. So in the second part of his video, he talks about how difficult it is for a foreigner to find an apartment here in Japan. And unfortunately, what he says in the video is very true, that some landlords here in Japan wouldn't accept foreigners as a residents. The reason I can think of it is because the landlords are not simply ready to deal with cultural or language barriers, such as etiquette of not taking off shoes inside, or difficulty in explaining paperwork, etc., which I think is just a prejudice and not right thing for them to do. But I recently found a lawsuit case that happened in Kyoto, and according to the case, the court declared that it is not allowed for landlords to conduct discriminatory behavior of refusing to make a contract just because the tenant was a foreigner, which obviously we know it as a common sense, but it is very unfortunate that Japanese court had to even make a decision to tell them that it's a wrong thing to do. But at the end of the day, it is Japan, and these kind of things just still happen every single day. So you need to be aware it's gonna be really hard for you to find an apartment here in Japan. But at the same time, you can still utilize a website designed for foreigners to find an apartment, or you could apply for a share house, which can be a little bit more expensive than living by your own, but there are a lot of entertainments as well as opportunities to make friends, so it might be a good choice for you to start off your life in Japan. As of third reasons, he talks about the work environment here in Japan. So the work environment here in Japan is not something that I can be proud of as of being a Japanese. It is very weird to see, although we do know the fact that a lot of people get sick or even die of overwork here in Japan. It seems like not so many people really put this problem into a discussion table seriously. What he mentions in the video is very accurate, and a lot of Japanese people work hard and long but never smart, and it's basically to gain attention or appraisal from the colleagues or boss, which kind of creates a peer pressure within the office and to put everyone into overwork paradox. So if you're looking to move to Japan, I highly recommend you to get a job in a multicultural company which takes Western principles, or maybe try doing freelancing, which I do personally. So no matter how independent you are, chances are you should get help when you are in Japan, especially at the beginning. From my experience, when I was a university student, I helped so many exchange students by going to immigration office center together or city hall together, because nobody there speaks English and my friends don't speak Japanese, so like they just couldn't get things done, and then I was always there to translate, to like get things done very smoothly. Nowadays you can use a phone or like Google Translate, but I still recommend you find somebody who can help you, especially when you go to government officials. And you don't need to be ashamed at all for getting someone's hand. Just buy him or her a beer later and they'll be happy enough to help you out. If you're a foreigner, I think you do stand out here in Japan. Like he mentioned, most of people living here are ethnically Japanese, and then we are not really used to seeing foreigners here in Japan. Growing up in the countryside of Japan, it did kind of shock me, or even I felt scared when I saw people who are not ethnically Japanese outside on the street. I was nervous, like what if they speak to me and then I can't communicate with them because I don't know their languages. But I think it was just myself being ignorant back in the days. But on condition that many people here are not really exposed to the situation of casually meeting up with people from different countries, or with such little education we have towards different cultures, you may understand why such things can happen here in Japan. But I want you to know that people may look at you, but we don't really look at you in any kind of negative way. We actually would like to be friends with you, and we are curious about where you are coming from, but we just don't know how to approach you. So as long as you stay with our rules and cultures, like don't be nervous, you will be fine. So number 6 is stuck in the past. As he mentions, Japan do have a very serious gender inequality issue, and it seems like people never really take it seriously. I see people online speaking like gender inequality should exist in order to protect women. Or the other day when I went to the service area while I was on the highway, I went to the smoking room and I came across these two men talking about the woman colleague that they have in the company, and they were speaking like, yeah, that woman colleague that we have, she's doing well, but I don't think she's gonna get promotion because she's a woman. Or they were just talking some negative things of her being a woman, which is very, very sad and very furious to listen to. And I was just so disappointed that Japan is still stuck in such a past compared to when I was in Europe. My point of view for Japan getting stuck in the past is because first, we live in isolated islands, and as a matter of fact, a lot of Japanese people only speak English, and it's really hard for them to get the information abroad unless they speak English. And because we're not really exposed to other cultures that much in our own media, we don't really have interest towards other way of thinking, or not so many people even travel abroad and always stay in Japan for the rest of their lives. But I think the biggest factor that plays here is the lack of education that we have in our primary schools, or compulsory education. At the university, when I chose to take these international relations studies or culture studies, and it was the first time for me to actually learn the authentic culture or conflict or political problems or human rights or any kind of problems being discussed in other countries or like global in general. I do hope Japan will find a way to look into those problems and eventually make a solution for it sometime soon. Otherwise, I'm afraid Japan is going to be very far behind compared to the rest of the world. So the next topics he talks about is relationships here in Japan, and it is somewhat true that Japanese people are not really romantically interested with foreigners, but personally I do have experience with dating foreigners, and so have a lot of my friends, so there are still good amount of people who are interested in dating with foreigners. But what I find very complicated and difficult dating a foreign woman is that foreign women tend to be more open-minded and then discuss that everything we have, whether it's a problem or just about anything. But sometimes for me, as being a Japanese guy, I would kind of like to keep it silent, keep it peace, but I just realized that it's not gonna work the way I want to do, and it's not gonna work the way they want to do. So what I believe is that it's very important for both two parties in relationship to acknowledge the day's difference in where they're coming from and sort of make a compromise out of it to keep it thrive the relationship. Also, a lot of Japanese family has a kind of messed up relationships because the father really needs to take a lot of time on the work, and he or they end up not really spending time with their kids. And for me, when I was much younger, my father used to take a night shift. So basically when I was awake, he was sleeping, and when he was sleeping, I was awake. So we didn't really have a time to catch up with each other. But still though, he made some time to hang out with me during the weekend. So I have a memory of going for fishing or going for a drive. It was a blessing. But as a matter of fact, a lot of Japanese fathers will not be able to take family trip with their family during the weekends because he has a lot of unfinished jobs that he needs to do, or he's summoned by colleagues or boss to play the golf, which he can't really refuse. So in the reason number 8, he talks about healthcare here in Japan. And to tell you the truth, I don't really have experience of healthcare abroad, so it's kind of difficult for me to have a comparison or kind of specific information about how the mental care here in Japan is like, because I'm just really used to it, and then I'm kind of ignorant towards like healthcare in different countries. But I do know that the mental health care is very overlooked here in Japan. It's one of the least discussed topics here in Japan, and we even kind of find it taboo to talk about it sometimes. So if you're seeking for some help, especially about mental health here in Japan, I recommend you to look for online therapy in your home country rather than trying out some mental health care here in Japan. So in the next chapter, he talks about the job opportunities as a foreigner here in Japan. And I do believe what he says is very right, and it is going to be very difficult for you to find a job unless it is an English teaching job. So I think the biggest reason why is because a lot of Japanese companies only use Japanese as of the main dominant language. So unless you speak business level of Japanese, it is going to be very hard for you to find a job here in Japan unless you have some strong backgrounds or skills in any certain fields. So for example, my friend from United States is not teaching English, but it's because he has skills in computer science and engineering. So he works in an engineering company in Tokyo and he gets paid quite well. But if you don't have any of those kind of creative or specific skills in the field, and if you don't really like teaching English, chances are you would probably not gonna like your lifestyle here in Japan, because what you have in your job pretty much decides what kind of lifestyle you will have here in Japan. Another tip for you is you should save your money before moving into Japan, as your first couple of months it could be very difficult for you to find a job here in Japan, even if your main target job here is to teach English. So be careful with that. So as of reason number 10, he talks about how difficult it is to make friends or Japanese friends here in Japan. And unless you speak very good Japanese, it is indeed very difficult for you to make typical authentic Japanese friends. The reason for it is that most Japanese can't really speak English, so it's gonna be very difficult to hold a decent conversation. And as you know, it's really hard for you to make friends with somebody without having a conversation, because no conversation, no fun. But you can still make some friends without speaking Japanese. For example, somebody who are interested in Western cultures or foreign cultures, or somebody who speaks English, which is like me. Or you could go to the cafe where they hold language exchange events, and people there usually speak basic level of English and willing to learn English as well as making friends. So you could be a language partner, and that might be a nice way to grow your friendship. But if you want to make a true authentic Japanese friends, I think it's gonna be somewhat essential for you to learn the language. Otherwise, what you're gonna end up is making a lot of foreign friends, which is totally fine. But if you are thinking of long-term stay or would like to learn the culture or would like to kind of engage more into Japanese communities, I highly recommend you learn the language, even though it's very difficult. So number 11, endless rules. And yes, I do know that there are so many rules here in Japan which can be very surprising and annoying to you at first, but once you understand how society works here in Japan, you will probably understand why we have so many rules and how it makes Japan peace and in order. Although it may be annoying to you at first, once you accept it, it's actually going to make your life in Japan so much easier and more comfortable. So in Japan, there is a saying that goes, 郷に入りては郷に従え, which means when in Rome, do as Romans do. So bear in mind that Japanese people really don't appreciate it when you wouldn't cooperate it with the Japanese way. So the last one is the forever outsider. And because there is such a small percentage of non-Japanese people living here in Japan, it's kind of hard for Japanese people to think of you not just as one of the other tourists. But at the same time, I have a friend from England who has lived in Japan for around 5 years, and one day I asked her a question. By the way, she speaks very good Japanese. Whether do you feel more like a foreigner here in Japan or more of the resident of Japan? And she replied to me saying that she feels more like she's a resident of Japan. People around her treat her as normal as other Japanese people, so she does not quite feel like she's an outsider here in Japan. So it all comes down to your surroundings, environments, or how much Japanese you speak, how much about Japanese culture you know, or how long you have lived here in Japan. But overall, I believe it is much harder for you to feel like you're a complete resident here in Japan than moving into between a different country within the Europe. But I think with the time and an effort, you can still try to minimize your feeling of being a forever outsider here in Japan. So thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you're sticking with me to the end, I really appreciate it because I can tell it's gonna be a bloody long video. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed my thoughts and tips about the video the Abroad in Japan made, and I hope you learned something new today. Anyways, as always, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.